My friend Alice is a really wonderful organic grower. I've profiled her in another video. Be sure to check it out right here. She works a lot with containers and she has a lot of knowledge on what works when you do container gardening. So she's the perfect person to teach us and to tell us how to go about container gardening when you don't have a lot of space. So she'll tell us about what potting mix is good, depth of planting, depth of the container, water, fertilizer, position, anything and everything you need to know to kickstart your gardening journey. Let's meet Alice.
Soil is the main source of minerals that you need. So you will need to consider putting soil. And the kind of soil I use in my mix is subsoil. If we'll have a look at this is red soil that's from the subsoil strata of soil. By subsoil, I mean not the one with organic matter and seeds and diseases and all that. It's just soil that's deep, where the minerals have been leaching to. Here we're using red soil. This is what we have available in our locality. It doesn't matter what kind of soil you have. Whatever color is your soil, there are probably nutrients that are there that you could still take advantage of. The rock dust that I use to mix will give us a source of so many other minerals. Some of them we don't know, but we know the minerals come from the rocks. So that's why rocks are very important. There will be phosphorus here. There will be so many other trace minerals that we don't know. The rock dust, about the same quantity. And if you don't have rock dust, you can replace this with sand, just a normal building sand. The third ingredient that I'm going to add is the wood shavings that has been used as bedding for chicken, so it has chicken poo. If you do not have chicken, you can add any other manure. You can also add any other source of nitrogen that's organic, like coffee grounds or any other source of organic nitrogen. We have observed at many seasons of using it that it really stores water, holds water. And it's not only holds water, it lets air spaces in. It makes the soil very fluffy, such that the water flows. Why does it have chicken poo? This is interesting because chicken poo is very rich in nitrogen. And in this case, we don't let it compost. That's also some other controversial thing that most people may ask, why not compost it? But from my experience and from working with containers, we've seen that when you compost, the nitrogen gets lost very, very quickly into ammonia. So you want the container to have at least some nitrogen in it, so for the plant. So the decomposition happens within the container. If you can't find wood shavings, you will have to look for another carbon material that's really water absorbing. Those could be different things, just like wheat straw can work, but it has to be chopped a bit. You could also use hay, but hay really lasts very short. The advantage of wood shaving is that it lasts quite a long time in the without decomposing fully. So you would not need to change every single season the container mix. So any other carbon thing, including peat moss, including cocoa peat, or any other carbon material that's really water absorbing. We also add compost, and in this case, this is not fully composted also. It's midway compost, because when you put a container, soil in a container fully decomposed, some of the nutrients get lost in the process of decomposition. So this, what you want is to take advantage of as much nutrition as you can, but in a balanced way. So, and mostly what you want to capture is nitrogen, because you have the minerals in the soil. The other minerals that you need are in the rock dust and the other things. But you need to keep nitrogen, which is actually quite volatile. It turns into ammonia and just gets lost in the air. So that's why you need it. If you can't find have decomposted compost, you can use regular compost. It's still fine. So the danger with this is only that there could be seeds that are not fully decomposted, seeds and plant material that's not fully decomposted. So there might be it can be a source of weed. That is why it's a catch 2 and 2. When you use fully composted compost, you at a loss in terms of nitrogen, but again, you don't have problem of weed seeds being in there. But when you use this half composted, you may have to deal with some weeds that may crop out, because there may be seeds that are still in the compost that have not broken down and can still germinate. So the last ingredient that I'm adding is microbes, the native microbes that we have made in the garden. And I understand there could be people who cannot make this formulation. There are microbes that are usually sold, effective microbes that you can buy in different places that they're being sold. That's still fine. What you need is to introduce microbial action in the container. 1 hand of this formulation, 1 handful can go for 1 wheelbarrow. If you buy EM liquid, just maybe put a teaspoon or 2 in a wheelbarrow, and that would just be good enough. The rest the microbes will do by themselves, because this container will last quite a bit, and you don't want very fast action. Actually, you want gradual action in the container so that the container can last for long while still actively feeding your plant. This is the basic potting mix that we use, and we've been quite successful with this potting mix. It may not look anything close to what you buy in your store, but this works. So now once you've made your potting mix, you need to decide on containers. And containers, you can use varieties of containers. And my advice would be whatever container you can get that is good plastic, not very light plastic, just good plastic, and that is food grade, that has come from food materials, you could use. It depends on your size of space and what you're going to grow in a container. For your deep-rooted vegetables, here I'm talking about things like tomatoes and other deeper-rooted peppers, plants, you may need to consider a container that's deep, that's around 30 centimeters deep. And this is such an example. You can also cut a container like this. You cut halfway, or you cut just at this point, so that you can be able to use it. You may need to consider putting handles for this, because it doesn't have handles. Then drainage holes for this need just to be 1 inch or 1.5 inches from the bottom on the side. Avoid putting your drainage on the bottom, simply because you don't want to encourage leaching of your nutrients. So what you do with this, at that base where you have left 1 inch or 1.5 inches, you add gravel, this size of stones, in there, pack them round, then put your soil mix. The reason for that is just to create a reservoir of water that's down there, so this container does not totally dry out, and again also to capture the nutrients that are going down with the water. Instead of having them just leach out, they get like held. You could be growing you could just be wanting containers for just things like lettuces, things that are shallow rooted. You could go for such a container. This is just about 6 or so inches deep. So this is for shallow rooted. But your spacing also will need to matter. How many cabbages can you put in here? That depends on the space you also put the plant on the ground. If you are growing on the ground, what spacing would you be able to use? Especially if you're using such a wide container. This kind of container can carry 5 lettuces, one at this corner, another one at this corner, one in the middle, one in this corner, one in the other corner. So the same with Swiss chard or spinach, you could also do the same. Yeah, so here it will carry like 5 plants because it have a wider top. For such containers, this would just be for 1 plant. This probably can take 2 plants because it has a wider capacity than this one. It has the same depth, but in terms of capacity, this is wider, bigger, so can take 2 plants. This can take 1 plant. Of the deeper rooted plants, or the plants that need to take their roots further, if you just want to do some sprouts, you may need to consider just a shallow container like this. This is around 4 inches. Again, make your holes on the side, not on the bottom sides. This is just a milk container. So you could use this for microgreens, for herbs like coriander. You could also use it for fenugreek, other herbs that you like to eat when they are still green, or just sprouts that you like to eat them when they are microgreens. So you could also use bags. Yeah, I have used bags in the past. The only disadvantage with the bags is that they don't last for long. So they might just take you for 1 season. And when you're doing your garden, your container garden, your objective may not be that you do it for just 1 season. You may want to do it for longer than 1 season, because you made your soil mix good and you can still continue more than 1 season as long as you're managing the container very well. This will only give you 1 season, this kind of. However, if you get very good quality bags that can last for very long, I also think bags also work. When you're filling this container, you fill and leave an inch, about an inch empty. Why do you do that? Is because you want this container to, when you're watering it, for it to create a water pot or a space where water can fill. So when you're watering, you make sure that you filled the whole container with water, and then the water will percolate easily, and that helps you not have to water every day. If you put too much and fill it like this, then when you're watering, like some people would do it like this, when you're watering, the water will not have time to percolate. It will be flowing out. You need to water. When you're watering for the first time, you will need to be a bit patient, because you want to soak the water with the soil with water for it to absorb it and keep it. So you do not do it in a hurry. You fill this space with water, and then you let it percolate, and then you water again. The point that you will know your container has enough water is the point where the water will not go down. It will stick around up here. That's the point you know this has gotten soaked very well, because you are starting off. You need the soil to be soaked properly with water. So this one now, you've seen it has taken a delay to soak, and there's water here on top. So I can rightly assume this soil has soaked. It's not supposed to be planted directly the first day. You may need to keep it a few days just to kick the microbial action. If you just transplanted, maybe you need to keep your plants in a shady spot so that they hold fast before you take them to a sunny spot. Some plants like sun, like tomatoes, you may need them growing in open sun, but some plants will tolerate some shade, so you can use the spaces that have shade. you can use for those shade plants. You will need to decide and research on what your plants that you're going to plant on your containers need, the kind of microclimate they need, and the kind of microclimate you actually have in your garden. If you just have a tiny backyard, it's not all uniform. You just need to look at it very closely and find the different spots where you can find containers. A lot of people assume that everywhere it's uniform, but you find that if you look closely, you find even small spaces have unique conditions that will favor different plants. If you're using this shallow container, you can just direct seed. Put your seeds in there and cover with soil, and they will just grow. You can also use it as a nursery for other vegetables like cabbage, like lettuce, other vegetables like cauliflower, whatever vegetables you want to grow, you can use it as a nursery or a starting container. But for this one, you want to transplant a lady seedling, which has already come from the nursery, and you want to transplant it in it. The other thing that you need to note is that depending on the plants you're planting, you may need to adjust pH a bit. You could add ash if you're going to plant things like tomatoes that just need your pH to be a little neutral, although this mix already is more of a neutral pH. If you need to grow something that really needs very low pH, you may need to add a little sulfur into the soil mix. Like for example, if you're going to grow blueberries, you need to add a little sulfur just to lower the pH a bit for the sake of your plants. But my advice is, once you decide what plant you're going to buy or you're going to put into the pot, then at that point you can now bring in your pH adjusters. If you're going to raise the pH or you're going to reduce the pH, and sometimes the type of plant you put will tell you what it needs, and then you're able now to manage your container from that point. Once you've planted your container, you need to mulch it just to keep the surface covered so that you don't lose a lot of water from the surface. So for this particular one, I use the same wood shavings that I used. You could decide to just use clean wood shaving or any other mulching material. You could use tree leaves, you could use hay, you could use banana leaves, you could use any other mulching material. After you've planted and after you've found the right position for your container, you will still need to maintain that plant. I advise that you take time and just observe how your plant is doing before you do anything. The plant will tell you if there are issues going on. If there are deficiencies, it will show on the leaves. The leaves may turn yellow, or the veins, depends on the kind of deficiency it is. Then you're able to deal with that with different things. If you see yellowing, like there's not enough nitrogen, then you will need to add nitrogen. If you see it's just not thriving, probably it's just the pH that's wrong. Or if you see the veins having issues, like they're yellow veins, you may know it may be having copper or some other mineral deficiency that you may need to deal with. So you just need to look and research on the different things that are happening to your plant so that you can do different treatments. But using the potting mix the way we have done it, most of the time the plant has everything it needs. It will be a rare case that you see nutrient deficiencies showing. The other thing you need to do is that occasionally you need to put a stick in, just to check whether the lower side has enough water. Put a stick, and also for air to flow. Plant roots need a lot of air. we don't neglect your container. Be trying to put holes in it so that you just allow air to flow. So occasionally you pass by, you pierce some holes on the container soil just to make sure air is having space to move in, because most of the airspace can be filled by water. So you need to be creating those air spaces occasionally. That will help you. If there are weeds, you pull them out. It's very easy to pull weeds around a container. That's one of the other advantage of a container. And then watering, just keep making sure that you are watering adequately. You can use your finger to check if the container is moist enough. You could also use a stick, but you need also to occasionally be checking down lower side, the bottom, up to the bottom. That's why you need a stick throughout to the bottom to check what's going on in the bottom.